Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, AFC Bournemouth 2, Aston Villa 2. The dust has settled a little bit. I feel the fan base is quite split on this one, really. And I think it's probably a good thing that we've let this settle down for many reasons. But before we get into it, mate, how are you doing?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. Yeah, I think it's the Equalizer has really kind of saved us, not just in terms of league position and everything like that, but I just think in terms of how we kind of feel about this game. I think a defeat and the narrative would have been really different. But I think because we got that late goal and because it was ultimately such a good goal, as I'm sure we'll get into, I think that has kind of saved the lads' skin, to be honest with you, because it wasn't a great day at the office. We didn't play brilliantly, I think it's fair to say, but a point, all things considered, I think especially as, you know, some of the teams around us got results, others didn't, kind of means that, you know, we're still sat in the top four, all is well. We've got a difficult run of fixtures coming up, both at home. I think it's kind of come out okay.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is expectations are so high, and I think we perhaps do need to temper that because I think on paper it is fair to assume that you can go and get a win away at Bournemouth, but we haven't done that for the longest time. It's a very tough place for us to go historically, and I know we're not the Aston Villa of old, but we're also not the Aston Villa that I think a lot of Villa fans think we are. Like, This is a very tough December run, 8 games, all competitions, such quick turnarounds, and I think, you know, you mentioned other teams' results. We can't rely on other teams. We shouldn't be doing that realistically. And you know, there are different points throughout the game where looking at the other scores, things look totally different. You know, with Fulham beating Liverpool at one stage and we're still losing, it's like, it's frustrating because if we were winning, then that's obviously way more ground that we've got on Liverpool. But then that narrative quickly flips because Liverpool end up winning, we end up getting the draw, and like, it's too much to stress about for me. Like, all we can do is try and win our games and, you know, the rest decides itself. I think ultimately, before the Spurs game, and we even said this, mate, if you take 4 points from these 2 games, and that's a point at Spurs and a win at Bournemouth, everybody's buzzing. But because we flipped that, people are seemingly frustrated. And I think it has to... Listen, Bournemouth, by no means did they play good football at all, but they're a very well-drilled side. It seems like Iriola's principles are starting to sort of seep into this group of players. They've had some decent results as of late. And, you know, they've got some good players. You look at someone like Dom Solanke, Tavernier, he was absolutely everywhere. Semenyo shouldn't have even been on the pitch, if we're being honest, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. Another very good player. So I think, you know, as I say, a lot of Villa fans do genuinely need to temper the expectations because we aren't going to win every single game. And especially with this run of fixtures that we've got now, mate, Arsenal and Man City, it's feasible that we don't win either, like if we're being completely honest. But it sounds like it would be very characteristically, you know, on brand for Villa to maybe get 3 points against one of these, like after drawing to Bournemouth.
Yeah. It was always a difficult place to go, and you and I both kind of knew that. It was kind of... This was the first time where I felt that we looked maybe a little bit leggy as well. You know, the fact that maybe... I think the lineup was interesting, and I think it's kind of, to work through this chronologically, I think the lineup was an interesting one. I thought it was interesting that Zaniolo started. As a result, I thought it was interesting that Moussa Diaby didn't. Obviously, I know Moussa Diaby started midweek, but I think considering everything that you and I kind of said before the game, I thought it was interesting that Zaniolo kind of got the nod. And again, he's kind of pulled at half-time. I think it was the same situation in the Notts Forest game as well. I think he got the start and was pulled at half-time there as well. And so that was interesting to me that we kind of went back to that. And I like that we're still putting Zaniolo very much in the first team setup. He's not just really a part of the rotation, but is still earning starts. And I think that's good for his confidence. You know, it's now 16 games, I believe, maybe 17 after that Bournemouth one that he's now had in a Villa shirt. That's including sub appearances, to be fair to him, but obviously no goals or assists as of yet. But the lineup was a little bit interesting, and obviously I think we got the best out of the team once we reverted to type, once it was Diaby and Watkins were obviously combined later for the goal. I think that, yes, we're trying to rotate and we're trying to make sure that we go into this Christmas period with a lot of fluidity in the starting 11 so that nobody feels the brunt of the minutes too much at this early stage. But yeah, considering that we knew that Ollie was nursing an injury, he was not really in the game up until he scored, really. I think we started to see this Villa side. We know that rotation has often hampered us, and so this is the caveat, isn't it? Is that when we've had kind of these Conference League games, we've seen how well connected the side feels, how well, not necessarily well drilled, but in terms of the combination player that really opened teams up on the weekend. That's not really transpired to the Thursday nights when guys are coming in and out of the 11. And it kind of felt a bit like that. I don't know what you thought, mate.
Yeah, I think for me, like, it's the rotation, but it's not just the rotation, it's the suspension of Kamara. I think he's a huge miss in this game, and I know we said he probably could do with the rest, and it was probably a good thing for him, especially just to sort of take him out of that spotlight after giving the ball away as he did to Legia. But like, I don't think we can understate the defensive cover that he provides. I think personally, mate, for me, I didn't think Tielemans had a bad game at all. I think he's clearly looking a lot more comfortable. But for me, if there's no Kamara, John McGinn has to be in that sort of double pivot with Douglas Luiz there. He is just way more robust. I felt McGinn wasn't in this game at all, really, in the wider position that he was sort of occupying, which is a great position for him when we've got Boubacar Kamara anchoring that midfield. But we really missed the steal and just the sort of the calm nature that Kamara, sort of brings to that midfield. And I think McGinn is probably the closest you can get to somebody when you're talking about robustness, when you're talking about somebody who can get about the pitch, get stuck into tackles. And I mean, maybe it's a good thing because obviously he's a booking away from a suspension. So ideally we need him for these next two games. But I think, and that kind of leads me on to the sort of Ezri at right back thing as well, because there's a lot of people saying, I don't like it, this, that. If I'm being honest, I'm not a massive fan of it. I will be completely honest. Not because he's not capable. I think offensively what Cash offers is better, and it just looks more natural to Cash getting forward than Ezri does. And there's no fault in Ezri defensively. And obviously that is where Cash's deficiencies lie in that department when it comes to defensively. But Kamara provides so much more cover for Concert in that position, and it's just one of them where it happens. We're gonna have a couple players that probably end up getting suspended with the bookings that we've been getting this season. It's just a bit frustrating, and I know Diego's getting pelters as well, but it's like, I thought he was really good against Spurs. I thought he was probably our best defender, and it's just one of them. And I know he doesn't cover himself in glory with the goal. It wasn't his finest hour, but for me, at half-time, I was calling for Cash to come on and sort of bring Concert back in to centre-half and take Diego off there. But, even playing out of position, I know Ezri did eventually come in centre-half, but Ezri's numbers were phenomenal. John Townley tweeted them out. Shout out to John. He made 11 out of 11 ground duels, won 4 of his 4 aerial duels, made 2 successful dribbles, 2 accurate long balls, 9 defensive actions, 5 recoveries, and had a pass completion rate of 83%. And we need to talk about that tackle on Kluivert as well, mate. That was just stunning, wasn't it? And that is Ezri Concert at his very best. I think it would be a grave shame if Concert spends the rest of his career at Aston Villa if there isn't a statue eventually built of this man, because he is just so freaking classy, man.
Yeah, like, Ezri at right back has been fine. He's been fine. Hasn't been great, hasn't been bad. Like, his words all of the other times kind of up until this point, and so I don't really think that we are kind of... You can't be too reactionary here. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because, like, it's been good up until this point. Like, there has been no problems with it. Like, in all of the other games that we've won when Concert has been playing right back, I don't think there's been much chatter about it, if any, to be honest with you. And so, like, just because we've gone and got a draw in this game, we kind of have to take the rough with the smooth and be like, yeah, generally, like Ezri Konsa is never going to light up the right back position. Of course he's not, but when he has had to play there this season, he's been just fine. I think it's a position that will adjust in January, and I dare say, mate, before the month is out, that we'll have conversations about potential right backs that we're being linked with, because we know that it's a place in the squad where we have no real rotation. And so, yeah, he's a wonderful, wonderful player, and that recovery tackle is just amazing. The goal that they get really early on is unfortunate from Diego. I think you're starting to see that we are going to give up a lot of chances playing this way under Unai. We're going to give up a lot of goals. You know, it's been a long, long time now since we had a clean sheet in the league. You have to go all the way back to that win away at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, which I think was the back end of September. So we've got at least kind of 2.5 months now-ish without a clean sheet in the league. And when you look at the games that we've got coming up, we do have to improve there. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, we're just going to get beat. You know, we gave Bournemouth 15 shots, 7 on target. And if you give those chances to Erling Haaland, Bukayo Saka, whoever it might be, you're going to lose those games. So we do need to tighten up in those areas. And so that's something we have to address, but I'm not massively concerned by it. To be honest with you, I know that might sound quite interesting, but we tend to score a lot of goals. We're one of the highest scoring teams in the league, particularly at home. I know that's, you know, we played away here, but we still, more than often than not, we're good value for 2-3 goals a game. And if that's the case, you are going to outscore most opposition. And I know that's not a sustainable way to play football, but it's got us pretty far so far this season. It's not a massive concern of mine. And the guys that are coming in defensively, it's interesting because I never really come away thinking any of them have had bad games. You're absolutely right. I thought Diego was great against Spurs. I didn't think he was particularly poor here today. I think he just kind of had that error for the goal. Semenyo takes it quite nicely. I agree that he probably should have seen red later on in the game, but it's kind of by the by. It's one where there is the other argument you can make, mate, in that in a parallel universe, we get the result today. Luka Dean is maybe a yard back, and the Diego goal stands, which is then ruled out, and then maybe Semenyo gets sent off there down to 10 men, and we go on and win this game 3-1. You just don't know. And so there is always that argument, I feel, that when we kind of have these games, it's more often than not a matter of margins. And that's why I think these games are really difficult to gauge, if nothing else.
Yeah. And like on the point of margins, mate, Bournemouth scored 2 goals from an expected goals tally of 2.02. We scored 2 from 0.68. And just to shout out Emi Martinez as well, who was absolutely phenomenal in this game. Makes 5 saves. They were all inside the box. Sorry, I just stumbled on my words there. Made 1 high claim and prevented a goal that was attributed to 1.03 expected goals. So, you know, he's vital. And in the way we, as you say, mate, is going to be high risk. We're going to give goals away, but we're going to need Emi to make the saves, as he has been doing, and sort of clutching up for us. That's going to be really important to how we play, because, yeah, it seems like we can't get that balance of scoring loads of goals and keeping clean sheets. We can't have it both ways. And as frustrating as that is, it's just something that we've got to come to terms with. But yeah, I mean, in general, I think it's just good that we got past it. I know a lot of people weren't happy with the draw, didn't think it was a good point. I think, you know, with the context of the game, the fact that we were trailing until the 90th minute, a point is a point. I don't think we can complain at that. And yeah, that Watkins goal, mate, is so good, isn't it? It's a great ball in from Diaby. And that's the thing, like, you know, you mentioned Zaniolo starting. Nicolo's going to look at that and say, well, he's made an impact in 45 minutes where I didn't. So, and, you know, we kind of touched on it briefly in the other podcast, mate. It's worrying. It's worrying that the longer it goes on, the worse it seems to get for Nicolo. And I think even when we sort of did our sort of best 11 towards the start of the season, you know, after we signed Zaniolo, and like an ideal world where everybody's fit and everybody plays, I think we both had JJ in over Nicolo, didn't we? And obviously we're both big Zaniolo fans. I just think, I don't know, as I mentioned the other day, it feels like we're entering into the Kai Havertz territory, and it's very hard to lose that sort of reputation when you've garnered it. Kai Havertz has definitely not lost it. I think it's difficult. He's almost misprofiled in a way. He's so big that he's been, played up front for Roma. He's played up front for Gala. They see him as this guy who can hold the ball up potentially. He's got height. He's a strong lad. But he just isn't really that guy. We've not necessarily seen him bully defenders off the ball, win 50-50s, win his aerial duels. That's not really been his game. When he broke through as a 10 come right winger. And you can see with how he dribbles with the ball that he's clearly got something. He just holds onto the ball for too long. And there's so many games that hopefully he can play himself into form, as we keep saying, mate. I feel like a broken record, but it's like, because we can't afford, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you're Uno, right? Because if you don't play him, you're almost admitting defeat. But then if you do play him, you're criticised for playing people who are in bad form. And then, things look a little bit silly, as I say, when Diaby comes on and gets an assist, doesn't it? It's such a difficult situation to manage. And to be honest, I thought Unai's comments post-game were really good about that. I think, he was completely honest, saying that we have a squad, we have to use it. He protected Nicolo as he should. But it is a bit of a difficult one, mate, isn't it? Especially with these two games coming up.
Yeah. It's one way I think you can make the other argument that we can't really afford to take him out of the route. Like we've struggled so much with injuries, particularly with JJ being out, that you can't afford to just give up on him because, we can't. Someone needs to fill those minutes. And by and large, I still maintain that I don't think his performance is probably less so in the last month, but have been that bad. I always felt that at the start of the season he was playing quite well, just he wasn't getting the finishing touches to get that goal or that assist. But I think the other way you can look at it is that it's relative to we knew he was a risk, and so it's only a loan with an option to buy. Like I think I've seen a lot of people kind of comparing the impact that Diaby's had and everything like that, but Diaby has made the start that, in terms of numbers, that maybe you'd expect from a £50 million signing.
Yeah, definitely.
That it's kind of like his numbers, they are relative to the types of deals that we made. We knew Zaniolo was going to be a risk, but the way in which we've structured this deal or potential deal reflects that. And I think that we were right to take a gamble on it. We've seen enough to definitely show that there is a player there. And I think he will definitely find a place to kind of spark it. And we've spoken a lot about all the different things that have been going off the pitch this season and everything like that. And so it's been a very complex season for Zaniolo. And I just think a goal would do him the world of good. I really does, because I think that would kind of appease everybody's fears, even if it's one of them that classic cliche, doesn't matter if it comes off his shin, his shoulder, his arse, like whatever it might be. For him to just hit the back of the net, I think would be such a massive relief.
Yeah, definitely, man, definitely. And I think as well, like what I'm happy with about this this sort of game, how this sort of panned out, is we got the job half done, right? We got a point, and I think everybody who watched the Spurs Man City game last night will see that if we approach this game maybe like we did against Tottenham, that there is potentially something that we can get from this game, right, mate? This was chaos. Obviously, the headline news is that Grealish won't be returning to Villa Park. Rodri will also miss the game. Mateus Nunes is suspended, and Jeremy Doku went off and straight down the tunnel with a potential niggle on his leg. So it's one of them where the City squad is a joke. So this isn't the game is ours, but Man City have played 3 games in the Premier League without Rodri this season and lost all 3. So there's a chance that we can get something here. We definitely rode our luck a little bit against Spurs. It has to be said, but that's football, right? That is football. That just is what it is. And at home, under the lights at Villa Park, we know it can be special. This is going to be a very interesting 90 minutes of football, mate.
Yeah, I can't make my mind up on this one, mate. This is going to be one hell of a game. Man City feel very gettable right now. They don't, particularly, I was looking through their results, and they haven't won a Premier League game in a month. It's 3 draws in a row, the 4-4 with Chelsea, through the 1-1 draw with Liverpool, and then the 3-3 draw with City. So, look, they've played 3 very good sides there, 3 sides in the traditional top 6. And so that's kind of that you have to factor that in. But although they got the win against Leipzig in the Champions League, they went 2-0 down there and then had to claw it back in the second half to win 3-2. And so they did that. And so you can't kind of treat that as too much of a negative, but they're conceding a lot of goals recently, a lot of goals. So in those 4 matches, they've conceded, like 11 goals. And so it doesn't feel like City. It feels like a City side that are very open, and particularly without Rodri, which, as you rightly say, they really struggled through that period. And it was very well documented that, they did struggle. There was obviously the defeat to Wolves. There was the defeat to Arsenal. It was a really interesting period where you kind of showed just how important he is. And Jack being out as well probably isn't a massive loss for them. I know he got the goal in the Spurs game, but I think it'd been 17 games this season without a goal or an assist. So Jeremy Doku is kind of their new main man in that position. But with how we kind of look at home, I dare say they'll be looking at this fixture with a bit of trepidation, because it's one of, if not the most difficult place to go right now in the Premier League, Villa Park. And for them to come with that depleted squad for such an important game, given that we're only 1 point behind them in the table, it's going to be amazing.
It is. And I think if you look at their fixtures, obviously after us, they play Luton at home on the Sunday. Then they've got an away tie in the Champions League. I think it's fairly plausible that, given, and obviously Rodri being out is huge, but City will go as full strength as they can today, because they'll have that opportunity to rest some of the bigger players in the Luton game, ready for that away trip in the Champions League. I can't even pronounce the side. I'm so sorry. Crvena Zvezda, where they're travelling away. Where even is that?
I think that's Red Star.
Is it? Is that Red Star Belgrade?
I think so. But I think that's the Serbia for Red Star.
Oh, there we go. We learned something new. Yeah, do you know what? Yeah, they've got the Red Star badge, haven't they? I can't believe I didn't notice that. Wow, Google done me there. But okay, so they go to Red Star, and that completely changes it. That's a huge game. That's a hostile place. It's a very difficult place to go. So I think it's fair to say that we will get Manchester City as strong as they can be against us on Wednesday. And I think what gives me confidence here is, first of all, Ollie Watkins is just phenomenal. The fact that he was fit, the fact that he was able to see through that 90 minutes of football is really big. John Duran looked a little bit better when he came on against Bournemouth, I feel. He had that shot that was deflected that almost went in, had Neto go in the complete opposite direction. I think that in a game like this, where Diaby has been rested to a certain degree, we'll have Kamara back. I think we're going to pack that midfield. I dare even say Tielemans probably plays a bit further up the pitch as well. I think, as you say, gettable is probably the word for Man City. I think there's something you can get here. The defence is questionable at best at the moment, and without that added protection of Rodri, they're going to be very, very fragile. And I think the thing with Spurs, I think the sort of main takeaway from the game with Spurs last night, obviously, well, apart from the refereeing disaster, really, Simon Hooper had an absolute stinker in that one. I think even you can admit that, Dan. But it's that Ange ball works, right? And that's a big validating thing for the Spurs players, for the Spurs fans. They were able to go to Man City, and I know City have historically struggled with Spurs for whatever reason, but the fact that they've been able to go to the Etihad, entertain in a 3-3 draw where many teams would have perhaps written Spurs off, it means that they can buy into it. And I think that's the thing. We fully bought into Unai Ball. We can see that the players have, and I can't imagine there'll be any compromising of tactics. And there's no better place than at Villa Park, under the floodlights, like just giving Man City hell, man. Just pressing right from the get-go. And it's going to be an interesting game, I think, mate. And I have a feeling, given both teams' defensive records, that this could be like another 3-3 potentially.
Yeah, a hell of a lot of goals, mate. A hell of a lot of goals. I'm just looking at the numbers that I've pulled together, and they don't make for great reading. There's not a lot of stats that I can give you to kind of throw some hope. We're winless in our last 13 Premier League games against City. You have to go back to the Vyman winner all the way back in 2013, so a good 10 years ago, to find our last win against City. We've won just one of our last 12 league games on a Wednesday. That I didn't know, since we won 2-1 at Spurs back in May 2021. And we've won just 4 of our last 56 Premier League games against reigning champions. The last time we beat a reigning champion of the Premier League was the 7-2 win against Liverpool back in 2020. And so the numbers are very much against the Villa here, but one thing we've seen from Unai's brain is that he loves snapping bad records. He loves to be the one to break trends and put Villa back on the right path against a lot of bogey teams and teams like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you can call City a bogey team, but they're one that we've definitely struggled against, as have other sides in the league, to caveat that. But yes, there were some good numbers that came out of the City game. To be fair, you spoke about Ollie. He's only the 4th Villa player in Premier League history to provide 6+ goals and 6+ assists in back-to-back seasons. The other players that did that were Jack Grealish, Ashley Young, Dwight York. So shout out to you, Ollie. That's a big number. And I love completely random and meaningless stats. Ollie Watkins' late equaliser in the 89th minute and the 59th second was our latest Premier League equaliser since Keenan Davis got his against West Brom back in 2021. So there you go. So the 4 before that had a little bit more meaning. Just like we are the Keenan Villa podcast. We haven't spoken about the boy in a long time. Keenan Van Nistelrooy. I had to give him a little mention at the end there.
I love that, mate. I love that. I was there for that one. That was during lockdown. I was in the press box for that one. I was buzzing. I'm sure Keenan did it because he knew I was there. I'm sure it was like he dedicated that goal to me. But no, mate, that's the thing. Like, Watkins is just so good. Like, and he's in that run of form now where he is just scoring, and hopefully he continues that against these sides. I'm sure he'll be well up for it against Arsenal as well, obviously the team that he grew up supporting. But that is a conversation for another day, mate. Before we go, we need to do score predictions. I think I've just told you mine 3-3, mate. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't know. I also like a draw, mate. I also like a draw. I think we'll win one of these games. I'll say that much. I think we will be either City or Arsenal. And honestly, given everything, like, maybe I was going to go for the draw, but maybe I actually fancy us, given the lack of Rodri. It is literally that big. Maybe I fancy us to beat City more. So I will go. I also see it being high scoring. So if you're going to go 3-3, I'm going to pick the win and go 3-2.
Mate, I would love that. That'd be absolutely brilliant. Roll it back. Andy Vyman, you know.
Yes, there you go.
Guys, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Give us your score predictions. Give us your thoughts on the Bournemouth game and just how you're feeling in general. This preview has been uploaded onto YouTube, so that can stop the very, very, very few people that are complaining. But yeah, content's going to be coming thick and fast, so you guys are going to want to make sure you subscribe to the channel and make sure you're following us on both Apple and Spotify. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.